Howdy, y'all. I'm Elizabeth Gore. Welcome to a special episode of The Big Idea by Yahoo Finance, sponsored by PayPal. As the co-founder of the small business funding platform Hello Alice, it has always been my mission to help entrepreneurs have the tools they need to succeed. Today's episode is a special one because it is Small Business Saturday. This is one of the biggest days of the year where consumers are encouraged to shop local and celebrate small business. Since 2010, Americans have spent over $201 billion on this special day. It is a huge deal for the community. So let's cowboy up. Today's big idea question is, how do I turn Small Business Saturday into a year-long success? Our industry focus will be retail. Joining me today to talk about this is Tina Wells, the CEO of Wellspring. Not only is Tina a marketing and retail strategist who helps founders and corporations scale their businesses, but she's also an entrepreneur, author, and even a podcaster. I've known her for forever, and she's the perfect guest to help answer the big idea question today: how do I turn Small Business Saturday into year-long success? Let's talk to Tina. All right, Tina, welcome to The Big Idea.
Elizabeth, thank you for having me.
How long? Almost 20 years?
So long.
Oh my gosh. Even though we're only 20 right now.
I was going to say, we're only 25.
Yeah. Well, happy Small Business Saturday.
Yes.
It's the best day of the year.
My favorite shopping day of the year.
Right?
Yes.
What should people do today?
Support small businesses, support your local businesses, just really in every action in any way you can today, support small.
I love it. Well, I think you and I talk a lot that every day should be Small Business Day. And so for the small business owner themselves, our big idea question is how do you leverage a day like today, a Small Business Saturday, for your own business? I mean, you're the marketing guru, right?
So I think the most important thing is have your product available, right? Do everything you can to anticipate what the demand is going to be. You want to make people happy. You don't want to get sold out on things. So I think it's leading up to it. Having your supply chain in order, being clear about how long it's going to take you to ship product, being very clear. People are excited. They want their products for holiday. They want it to be clear when they're going to get it. And so I think it's the non-sexy stuff, really, that you learn in the supply chain stuff that I really think is most important for that day and for that customer experience.
So, Tina, we're heading into holiday shopping. It's the biggest year for receipts. How do small business owners take advantage of that bump?
So I think it's important to understand for more traditional retailers, right? Black Friday, where does that name even come from, right? It was the day they got into the black, meaning out of the red, right? So think about where that falls in the year. That means that they were trending negative for a long time, and then they knew the last 30 days would give them the bump that they needed, right? And so those businesses had to really strategically plan for the idea that come Black Friday, everything was going to right set, right? So I think it's understanding what that lift is going to do and then how you sustain it through the year, right? But understanding it's a lift, it's not the norm, right? And I think also planning throughout the year, what are those other times that you'll have that lift? There are natural times when consumers are shopping. You need to, again, know your customer to know those times. So I'll give you a few examples. Mother's Day, right? We know Mother's Day is a big shopping time. We know back to school is a big shopping time. And then holiday. So what are your plans around those times? And then more importantly, we know that like Q1 can be pretty slow, right? So for certain businesses, for example, Galentine's Day becomes a thing. Valentine's Day becomes a thing. So it's really plotting and planning throughout the year. Okay, we know we're going to get huge bump around. I have some clients who get huge bump. Almost Mother's Day is almost equivalent to the holiday, right? And then they've got the summer slump. And so it's meticulous planning and budgeting so that you can sustain the business throughout the year. But this all goes back to knowing your customer. If you don't know your customer inside and out, you don't know when those times are. You don't know if there are certain days that matter more to your customer set than other days do. So I think it goes back to that mastering your customer. Then once you know when they want to shop, making sure that you are budgeting around that for a more consistent income.
Very helpful. And let's go back to buzz marketing. Tell us a little bit of your story in starting your business.
Goodness, I was an accidental entrepreneur. I started my first
Thank
company
God.
when I was 16 years old, completely by accident. I wanted to be a fashion editor, ended up getting a job writing for a newspaper for girls. I was a product review editor, and that really became my thing, reviewing products. And I didn't realize until I was about 18 that I could get paid for this and that it was called market research. And so I entered marketing at a really young age. I was doing influencer marketing pretty early on. My
Right
friends
when it started.
Oh, yeah. My friends like to tell me I was a blogger before that even existed. But my whole career has really been focused on product development, product marketing, and really consumer behavior. And so those are the things that I feel like I love the most.
Well, and you've helped small brands like us, like Hello Alice when we first started, but then you've gone all the way up to Target and big box stores. Is there a theme on marketing that could go through no matter how small or large you are?
Yeah, it's interesting. Being a marketer and then having the opportunity to create and launch my own brands at 2,000 Target stores was quite the experience. And I think what I learned through that is there are things that are always consistent in marketing. So, if you're a classical marketer or old school marketer, you would have been trained on something called the 4 Ps, right? So product, place, promotion, price, right? Those are
Say it
the
one more
real-
time for everybody.
Yeah. So product, place, promotion, price.
Got it.
That is the foundation of all successful marketing, right? So you hear a lot about marketing today, it's the algorithm. The algorithm, that's a piece of it, but really it's product, place, promotion, price. What's the product, right? So getting into features and benefits. Where is it being sold, right? Is it physically in a store? Is it your website, right? There are different ways that you have to manage and market that. Promotion. So that's where Facebook and ads and all of those things come in, but there are tons of different ways you can promote your product, right? And then finally, price. And I think those of us who have been in retail, I've seen how that lever, for example, being in a big box store, the minute there's a promo or the minute something goes on sale, my sales could 10x that week just from that promo, right? And so it's a mix, and it's called a marketing mix for a reason. So what that means is it's not just about an ad, right? So that's one quarter of the
Right.
mix that we're talking about. All of those things have to play together. And so I think that is what I've seen, whether it's a small business up to the biggest businesses in the world, is that mix has to be just right. And it's an ever-changing mix too, right? It's not a set it and forget it. It could work for a season. And we are seeing right now how culture is changing. It feels like almost daily, so I would say my biggest piece of advice is constantly look at your mix and say, do I have the right mix? Is this working? And when you see success, really think about, how do I build on that success?
The reason I love that too is small business owners, most of them won't have funding early on for advertising. So you're saying that there's so many other components that's critical outside of that.
Yeah. And when you think about promotion, you have to think about owned, earned, and paid. For some reason, I feel like for the last decade at least, we've been so focused on paid, right? And I think those of us who grew up in marketing before that, we were really focused for a long time on earned, right? So that's where PR and podcasting and all these things come into play, but also owned, right? Your real estate, your Instagram page, your page, like where you actually communicate with your customers really matters as well. And so again, as we start to drill into different parts of marketing, you start to see how small paid actually could be in your marketing mix.
I want to ask you about consumer behavior because I feel like it's changing by the second. And small business owners now have to shift on even the software they use. I remember when everyone had to go cashless, during COVID, and they had to do tap, and now people are using things like PayPal's buy now and pay later. And how do you track consumer behavior as a business owner?
Yeah, so I would say that I think 50% of your job is to understand what the market is doing at any time, right? Just to be receiving the information, not even at the place of what you're going to do with it, but really thinking through, where am I getting this data that is not going to be biased by what I hope will happen, but what are the sources?
We get so attached, don't we?
We get so attached, right? So, I'll tell you, when you sell at a big retailer, every week you get your sales, and whether you like it or not, the data show what the data show, right? And so it's, what are those sources where you're just getting, this is what's going on? And then what is your process for synthesizing that information, right? There's the first part is just gathering it, right? Making sure you have really reliable sources that just tell you, right? We're in a time right now where not all sources are reliable, right? So how do you get to really understanding what is happening, right? Assessing the landscape, then taking some time and having a process to work through what that means for your business. Because just because a trend is happening doesn't actually mean that that's a trend in your business, right?
I mean, how do you know? I think that's so important.
I think that because I'm going to say something a little controversial, but I'm going to say
Let's go.
I think that because for 10 years plus, an algorithm has performed so well, I think a lot of businesses did not learn their audience.
Really?
I do. I think that there were businesses where it was like a bit of a casino, right? And your house won. And now we're in a time where things are changing. And I think people have quickly had to get to know their customer, right? I think if you put a certain amount of money in and you get a certain amount of money out, you maybe didn't have to dig as deep, right? Because the tool worked really well. And we have seen over the last 10 years, some tools come in that worked really well. For example, 2020, Clubhouse was the place to be. There are people who had 1 million followers on Clubhouse. What does that matter today? We have to understand that tools are going to change. And I also think, I was just saying to a friend, I remember years ago when people said TV was dead. You could argue now TV has never been better, right? But there was a time when we said TV is dead, where we said print was dead. And that was before we had the Pioneer Woman magazine, before we had Magnolia Journal, right? So what we learn as marketers is, no, the tools just change, right? And the application is changing, right? So social is changing, right? We're now, I'm hearing people want to be more analog in 2026. That's fine. What is your responsibility as the business owner is to know your customer and to know where they are. And I think historically as marketers, we would name our customer. We knew every single thing that person did all day because we were customer obsessed. I think we moved to a place where people became algorithm obsessed. And then when the algorithm doesn't work for whatever reason, people don't actually know that customer. They just knew I'm focusing on ad type and colors and words and this and that, and not necessarily like who's the person on the other side, right? And to me, that's the best part about marketing is to get to know that person and to get to know how you can be most of service to them, right? And so I think on a positive note, we're getting back to that. We're getting back to really knowing our customer, knowing where our product fits in their life and how to best make our offer, right? Because if you're a marketer, at the end of the day, you love sales too, right? You love
come on.
being able to say, I have something really interesting, and you love that connection with the customer. And so I think those are good things that we're getting back to that. But for a while, it was an algorithm thing. And I've been in boardrooms where we sat with marketing teams and asked, why are we spending X amount of dollars? And there were just no answers because it was, well, it worked, And so I think getting back to the fundamentals will mean you have a solid house, right? And that's the basis of like the 4 Ps. It's that the house is always on a solid foundation. And yes, you're going to add some fun things, you're going to try things, but you have to make sure the foundation is always solid.
So is there anything that small business owners can do to set themselves apart online specifically?
Yeah, so the number one tip I have right now is to get as simple and clear as possible. I think we've spent a few years in really complex funnels and emails, and I have trips and triggers and all of these things, right, where we're really inundating our customer, right? People are inundated in their lives in general right now. How are you as clear and simple about what you're offering right now, right? And understanding what your customer needs to hear. They don't need 27,000 facts about it's like this product, this thing, this price. We're here for you.
All right, Tina, hold that thought. We will be right back here on The Big Idea. Thanks again to PayPal for sponsoring this episode of The Big Idea on Yahoo Finance. I love their Buy Now, Pay Later feature. It is the perfect tool to boost sales this holiday season and give your customers more flexibility to pay. I am thrilled to announce that Hello Alice is partnering with PayPal on the Main Street Rising Awards. Nominate your business or one that you love today to gain access to exclusive in-person events, nationwide recognition, and for a lucky few, grant funding. Head over to mainstreetrisingtour.com to turn in your nominations today. Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to The Big Idea. We are talking all things small business Saturday with Tina from Wellspring. So you're a creator, yet you use AI.
I love AI.
So tell us, how does a small business owner use it effectively?
So most important thing I always say about AI is your output is only as good as your input. So if you are not inputting something, let's say an area in which you are an expert, do not expect the output to be this magical output, right? You have to understand the right questions to ask. And so I think it's about doing the best work you can up front. And again, it's knowing your customer, because you could ask a question, but what if that answer doesn't really relate to your specific customer, right? So it's really, I like to think about it as training your AI tools on your customer, on your method, on your product, on what you know, not just showing up like it's a genie saying, give me a marketing plan. For what? To whom? For how much? For how long? So there are lots of steps that go into it. But it's understanding, again, my inputs determine my outputs with that tool.
Very helpful. You are such a successful person, and I know that success can be built on a lot of mistakes. And on our show, we try to be really honest about our dirty unicorn. So what is one of the mistakes in business that we can all learn from that you've experienced?
Oh, goodness, so many. But I would say really when I look at my brands and what I did at Target, I wish I had thought about a future beyond one retail partner earlier and what that would look like. And I think I would have been able to really continue those brands past their exclusivity and past their kind of capsule collection. And I just, at the time, was thinking, well, we don't know if this is going to go, right? And we don't know if we're even going to get the business award. So how do you go raise money to build something that you don't even know if it's going to be something? But I think I should have been a little bit bolder and a little more not so risk averse at the time, and really thought about what the future could look like 5 years down the road. And I think that was a mistake, because now I had momentum and kind of ended that momentum, and of course I'm a founder. I figured out a way to pivot. But I think for that, to have customers who are so loyal to both of my brands, I had a home office brand, and then especially to Wander Lane, which I think did more than I ever thought it was going to do. I think in hindsight, I'm like, well, that was a failure to not have had a plan in place for how I was going to continue to grow those brands.
So would you give the advice to business owners? Let's just say, like, I think of the veteran-owned company Busy Baby, and she fought so hard to get not just into Walmart, but she got into Walmart and Target and so on. And is your advice, even if you're really excited about the one, to really shop it around?
Yeah, I think one, there's so much commentary going on about specific programs, right, for founders. And I think what I've learned is there needs to be an infrastructure that supports your customer, period, right? And not as a promo or a one-off, but as something that is like deeply built into the culture of any retailer, right? That your customer matches their customer, that it's not like, oh, we're interested for now, right? That there's like a very long-term commitment to, and this is across the board, right? If you have a business, like I had a client who was in the incontinence business, right? Definitely serving seniors and people of a certain age, the retail partners had to match that community, right? Not like, oh, we're interested now, but because it is a long-term, it takes years to develop products. It took me 2 years just to bring the product to market. And I think it's not just choosing more than one retail partner. I think it is having the infrastructure that supports being in 2,000 stores. I had never built a product for retail. And while it was amazing to launch and a huge feat to do what I did, I think in hindsight, it demanded way more infrastructure than I was able to do self-funding, right? And so I think understanding the nature of big retail. I think average person doesn't understand. And in a lot of these retailers, these are 1-2 person like founding teams. Like these aren't big teams serving your favorite product, in big retailers. They're smaller, right? And so it's also maybe building and going into less stores at first. I was out of the gate and minimally my first brand was 1,500 stores. That's a lot of stores.
A lot of stores
to service and launch and did it. And we did a really good job. But what we were able to do was service the exclusivity and not build a business for long term.
So in honor of my favorite day of the year, of Small Business Saturday, I would love your one piece of advice for the small business owners themselves as a human, because you always have so much depth to you. Like, what's your advice to that business owner today to honor them?
I think it's really important for business owners to maintain a practice of curiosity. Like, I think curiosity is always the cure for stagnation. And I think when you're stagnant in your business, a lot of times it's because you're not asking the right questions, right? But you can't just be prepared to ask the right questions when a crisis shows up, right? Curiosity is a muscle that I think you have to train like any other muscle. And I think it's about where you get your inspiration from and having a practice around that, right? Every day I do not wake up with a full cup, right? So I have to have practices in place. It's like, okay, this isn't flowing. What am I going to do? Okay, maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll do, like I have a toolkit of things that I know will really help me when I feel like I'm not really curious about much, right? And so I think it's understanding for that founder to understand what their toolkit needs to be and what they're going to put in place before a crisis happens, right? And I think we're in a season right now as founders where we're all being stretched. We're all having to come up with ideas and solutions to problems we never thought we would ever have, right, at this stage in business. But if you're curious, you're going to be solution focused and you're going to have kind of this muscle that's ready to work for you because you've spent time really growing it, and learning how to use it. And so my piece of advice would be whatever you can do, find a way to develop a practice around curiosity.
Always be curious.
Yes.
Oh, I just adore you, Tina. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank
and happy
you.
Small Business Saturday.
Happy Small Business Saturday.
At the end of each episode, I like to give a shout out to a small business who's doing amazing work. Today, I'd like to shout out one of Tina's favorites, the Lip Bar. Founded by Melissa Butler, the Lip Bar is a vegan beauty brand. While known for their lipsticks, TLB also sells a full range of cosmetics from lipstick to blush to mascara and more. Check them out at lipbar.com. Thanks to Tina for coming on the show, and thank all of you for joining us. We hope you've learned a lot. This has been The Big Idea from Yahoo Finance. Please make sure to scan the QR code below to follow Yahoo Finance podcasts, or check us out wherever you get your podcasts at The Big Idea. You can also come say howdy to me at any of my social channels at Elizabeth Gore USA. I'm Elizabeth Gore, and as my grandma always said, hold your head up high and give them hell. See you next time.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.